We assume supermarkets are governed by simple economics, but American grocery aisles are actually a maze of absurd corporate mandates, bizarre local ordinances, and hyper-specific rules. Today, we are exposing the 50 dumbest grocery store laws and secrets in America. By the end, your weekly food run will never look the same. 1. In Wisconsin, it is highly illegal for a grocery store or restaurant to serve margarine as a substitute for butter, unless a customer specifically requests it. The dairy state takes its cow byproducts incredibly seriously. For decades, yellow margarine was outright banned, forcing desperate housewives to smuggle it across state lines from Illinois like it was bootleg liquor. Even today, substituting margarine for butter without a direct order can land a business a steep fine. Honestly, wouldn't you want to live in a state where butter is protected by law? 2. Connecticut actually has a legal definition of a pickle, and to pass the test, it absolutely must bounce when dropped. This absurd regulation stems from a 1948 scandal where two sly packers tried selling plain cucumbers as pickles. The state government stepped in, declaring that a true pickle has enough structural integrity and vinegar infusion to rebound off a hard surface. If a grocery store sells you a non-bouncing pickle, they are technically breaking the law. Care to test this out in the condiment aisle during your next shopping trip? 3. Walking down the personal care aisle used to be a financial trap for female shoppers, but California recently made the so-called pink tax highly illegal. State law strictly forbids grocery stores and pharmacies from charging a higher retail price for women's products, like pink razors or floral shampoos, if they are substantially similar to the men's versions. Supermarkets caught aggressively upcharging simply based on the gendered marketing of a plastic handle now face massive financial penalties. It is about time you stopped paying a premium just for a pastel color palette. 4. American grocery stores are legally required by the government to power wash and sanitize all commercial eggs before they hit the shelves. This strips the egg's natural protective coating, which is exactly why Americans must immediately refrigerate their eggs while the rest of the world safely leaves them out on the counter. 5. In Bergen County, New Jersey, shopping on a Sunday feels like a minor apocalyptic event. Strict local blue laws allow supermarkets to open for food, but it is highly illegal for them to sell you clothes, electronics, or homewares. Store managers literally have to rope off the forbidden aisles with police tape. You can easily buy a frozen turkey, but if you try to purchase the roasting pan sitting one aisle over, you are breaking the law. Would you survive in a town that outlaws buying socks on a weekend? 6. When Washington state finally allowed grocery stores to sell liquor, the legislature slapped it with the highest spirits tax in the nation. But here is the deceptive part. The law legally permits supermarkets to display the pre-tax price on the shelf tag. You think you are buying a $20 bottle of vodka, only to reach the register and discover state taxes and volume fees have magically inflated the price to nearly $30. It is a government-sanctioned jump scare right at the checkout counter. 7. In Texas, grocery stores are legally prohibited from selling liquor, restricting them entirely to beer and wine. But it gets weirder. If you want to buy that beer or wine on a Sunday, you historically had to wait until noon, presumably so you would not skip church to go tailgating. They recently graciously rolled the time back to 10 in the morning, but the paternalistic grip on your weekend grocery run remains. 8. Texas fundamentally does not trust grocery stores to weigh your weekly meat and produce accurately. The Texas Department of Agriculture employs specialized, undercover agents who randomly ambush supermarkets to vigorously test their deli and checkout scales. The legal tolerance for mechanical error is incredibly microscopic. If a scale is off by even a tiny fraction of an ounce due to a speck of dust or a heavy decorative sticker, the store is hit with massive fines and the scale is condemned. It is a brutal, zero-tolerance regulatory policy ensuring you never overpay for a slice of turkey. 9. North Dakota mandates a bizarre physical separation in its supermarkets. If a grocery store wants to sell alcohol, the booze section must be enclosed by a physical wall and operated with a completely separate cash register. You cannot simply put your milk, eggs, and whiskey on the same conveyor belt. You have to check out your groceries, walk through a designated barrier, and make a separate transaction for your alcohol. It is an architectural headache designed purely to make buying a beer feel like entering a high-security vault. 10. California grocery stores are legally barred from giving you a thin plastic bag, forcing you to buy thicker, reusable plastic bags for 10 cents each. The incredible irony here is that most people forget their reusable bags anyway, end up buying the thicker ones, and then throw those in the trash. The law was intended to save the environment, but it effectively just created a brand new revenue stream for supermarkets selling premium plastic waste. It makes you wonder who actually wrote this supposedly green legislation. 11. In Missouri, grocery stores face severe penalties if they dare label a plant-based product as meat. State lawmakers made it a criminal offense to use the word meat on any packaging unless the product came from a harvested two-legged or four-legged animal. If a supermarket tries to sell a soy-based vegan sausage and forgets the word imitation, they can literally be fined thousands of dollars. Do you think the beef industry actually felt threatened by a tofu patty? Or is this just petty politics? 12. If you are hunting for a bargain on dairy in Pennsylvania, you are completely out of luck. State law mandates minimum retail prices for milk, meaning it is strictly illegal for a supermarket to put a gallon of milk on sale or offer it as a loss leader. The Pennsylvania Milk Marketing Board sets these prices every month to protect local farmers, and undercutting them is a serious offense. You can get a massive discount on almost anything else in the store, but cheap milk is legally impossible. 13. If you visit a public supermarket in the Southeast, you will encounter a bizarre corporate mandate right at the entrance. Since 1940, every single store has been strictly required to feature a massive, highly accurate medical-grade scale for customers to weigh themselves. This rule started when home scales were an expensive luxury, and Publix legally maintained the tradition ever since. It is the only grocery store in America that boldly demands you confront your precise body weight right before you walk into the bakery aisle. 14. Walking through a California grocery store can quickly feel like navigating a highly unstable toxic waste dump, entirely thanks to Proposition 65. State law mandates severe, terrifying warning labels on any consumer product containing chemicals linked to cancer. Because the normal process of roasting coffee beans or baking fresh bread produces trace amounts of acrylamide, supermarkets are legally forced to post signs warning you that buying a baguette might be lethal. 15. Returning empty cans to a Michigan grocery store is a great way to get your 10-cent deposit back. But smuggling cans from Ohio to do it is a serious crime. Michigan's deposit is higher than neighboring states, prompting an underground market of people bringing out-of-state trash across the border for profit. If a supermarket catches you returning bulk cans that were not purchased in Michigan, you can face up to 5 years in prison. Yes, you can go to a literal penitentiary for recycling too aggressively. 16. Florida supermarkets are legally bound by the incredibly strict regulations of the Florida Citrus Commission. It is an actual crime to sell immature, unripe, or artificially colored citrus fruits that trick consumers. The state protects its billion-dollar reputation so fiercely that selling a sour, deceptively green grapefruit can result in government confiscation of the entire shipment. Do we really need taxpayer-funded fruit detectives, or should buyers just learn how to pick a good orange? 17. You will never find raw, unpasteurized milk in a Texas grocery store, and that is not just store policy, it is the law. While it is legal to buy raw milk in Texas, the state mandates that you can only purchase it directly from the farm where the cow was milked. The moment that raw milk enters a commercial supermarket environment, it becomes a banned substance. Health officials insist it is about preventing bacteria outbreaks, but it forces raw dairy enthusiasts to drive hours just to get their unregulated fix. 18. While fancy grocery chains across the country are rapidly switching to cashless, automated checkout systems, Rhode Island officially banned the practice. State law legally mandates that every single retail store, including major supermarkets, must accept physical cash as a valid form of payment. The government decided that forcing consumers to rely exclusively on credit cards or smartphone apps is highly discriminatory. So, no matter how futuristic and robotic a grocery store tries to be, they are legally forced to keep a cash drawer ready for your crumpled dollar bills. 19. Wisconsin strikes again with its obsessive dairy legislation. It is the only state in America that requires all commercially sold cheese to be formally evaluated by a licensed cheese grater before it hits supermarket shelves. If a grocery store attempts to sell an underground, ungraded wheel of cheddar, they are breaking state law. They even have a master cheesemaker program that takes over 10 years to complete. Do you think this level of cheese gatekeeping is brilliant, or just completely unhinged? 20. Walmart stations. Greeters at the exit to aggressively check your receipt, but legally, you are participating in an illusion. Unless you are in a membership club like Sam's or Costco, standard supermarkets have no legal authority to detain you simply for refusing to show your receipt. Unless they actively witnessed you stealing, state laws generally allow you to just walk right past them. The store heavily relies on your polite compliance to enforce a security rule that has absolutely no real legal backing. Have you been dutifully stopping for no reason? 21. In Maryland, you can wander the massive aisles of a modern supermarket and find absolutely everything except a simple six-pack of beer. State law completely prohibits chain grocery stores from selling any beer or wine whatsoever. While the rest of the country casually grabs a bottle of Pinot Noir alongside their frozen pizza, Maryland residents are legally forced to make a second trip to a standalone liquor store. It is a wildly outdated law designed to protect independent alcohol retailers from corporate competition. 22. Have you ever been asked to show your driver's license just to buy a bottle of fermented tea? Because kombucha is made through a natural fermentation process, trace amounts of alcohol naturally develop inside the bottle while it sits on the supermarket shelf. If the alcohol volume creeps even slightly over half of 1%, federal law instantly reclassifies this trendy health drink as an alcoholic beverage. Teenagers simply trying to improve their gut health are routinely rejected at the checkout register because their tea is technically a microbrew. 23. Minnesota grocery stores are trapped in a bizarre legislative time warp. State law dictates that supermarkets can only sell beer containing a maximum of 3.2% alcohol. The hilarious problem? Almost every major brewery in America stopped manufacturing 3.2 beer years ago. Because the government refuses to update the law, supermarket beer aisles are looking increasingly empty, legally forbidden from stocking the standard brews available everywhere else. Why stubbornly enforce a law for a product that practically does not exist anymore? 24. If you try to scan a bottle of wine at a self-checkout register in New Mexico, you are committing a crime. The state enacted a strict law legally forbidding grocery stores from allowing alcohol purchases through automated kiosks. Even if the machine flags an attendant to check your identification, the actual scanning process must be performed by a human cashier. It is a highly inconvenient policy built on the paranoid assumption that robots simply cannot be trusted to monitor your weekend drinking habits. 25. You will never see an authentic Kinder Surprise egg near a supermarket checkout lane in America, thanks to a draconian federal FDA regulation. The government strictly bans the sale of any confection that has a non-nutritive object completely encased within it. Because the chocolate hides a plastic toy, the government treats these tiny European treats like hazardous contraband. Are American consumers really so distractible that the government has to legally protect us from accidentally swallowing a tiny plastic race car? 26. Supermarkets in Chicago are legally obligated to charge a specialized 5-cent tax on every single bottle of plain water they sell. City politicians push this law to encourage citizens to drink tap water and reduce plastic waste. However, they completely ignored the fact that many older neighborhoods struggle with lead pipes and water quality issues. So, the city essentially profits off its own residents who are simply trying to buy clean hydration from the grocery store. It is a masterclass in bureaucratic irony. 27. Seattle forces its grocery stores to navigate a ridiculously complicated sugary beverage tax. Supermarkets must charge a hefty premium on sodas and sports drinks to combat obesity. But thanks to intense lobbying, there is a massive legal loophole. Any drink where milk is the primary ingredient is completely tax-exempt. You pay a severe penalty for buying a standard cola, but you can buy a massive sugar-loaded bottled frappuccino entirely tax-free. Do calories suddenly not count if they are swimming in dairy? 28. If a jar in the supermarket does not proudly say peanut butter, but instead uses sneaky phrasing like peanut spread, you are looking at a legally inferior product. The FDA ruthlessly enforces a mandate that authentic peanut butter must consist of at least 90% real peanuts. If a company tries to cut corners by adding too much vegetable oil, sugar, or artificial fillers, they legally forfeit the right to the classic name. The government is surprisingly aggressive when it comes to defending the purity of your childhood sandwiches. 29. For decades, American supermarkets were technically lying to you every time they sold a white chocolate bar, because the government refused to legally recognize it as chocolate. Since it contains absolutely no dark cocoa solids, the FDA forced brands to label it as a white confection. It took massive corporate lobbying to finally establish a new legal definition, mandating that the product must contain at least 20% pure cocoa butter to earn the chocolate title. 30. Idaho fiercely protects its star carbohydrate. State law mandates that any potatoes sold in grocery stores displaying the Idaho seal must meet rigorous quality standards, and inferior spuds cannot be deceptively marketed. In fact, if a store tries to pass off a subpar out-of-state potato as an authentic Idaho gem, they face serious legal consequences. The state employs actual potato inspectors to enforce this starchy integrity. It is genuinely nice to know someone is out there relentlessly defending the honor of your French fries. 31. Have you ever used a plastic milk crate to store old vinyl records or garage tools? Congratulations, you might be an unwitting criminal. In states like Pennsylvania and Florida, the unauthorized possession of a registered dairy crate from a supermarket is a literal crime. State legislatures passed highly specific laws protecting these cheap plastic boxes because dairy distributors were losing millions of dollars annually to casual theft. If law enforcement catches you hoarding them, you can face massive financial penalties and even jail time. Who knew that harmlessly organizing your garage could make you an enemy of the dairy state? 32. Georgia takes its signature produce so seriously that the state government literally runs DNA tests on supermarket vegetables. By law, a grocery store can only label an onion as a Vidalia if it was grown in a highly specific, legally defined 20-county radius. To stop counterfeiters from scamming buyers, the Department of Agriculture deploys armed agents to raid grocery stores and scientifically test the genetic makeup of suspicious onions. 33. Selling unpasteurized raw milk for human consumption in grocery stores is highly illegal under federal regulations, driven by intense fears of bacterial outbreaks. But clever supermarkets discovered a hilarious, completely legal loophole. They simply label the product as pet food. In states like Florida, you can easily find glass bottles of premium raw milk sitting in the dairy aisle, explicitly stamped with the words, "For dog and cat consumption only." The government knows perfectly well that hipsters are pouring this over their morning granola, but under the law, their regulatory hands are completely tied. 34. If you want to buy a simple can of whipped cream for your pie in a New York supermarket, you better bring a valid government ID. State lawmakers actually made it a criminal offense to sell canned whipped cream to anyone under 21. The law was designed to stop teenagers from inhaling the nitrous oxide gas used as a propellant. So, while an 18-year-old can legally vote and join the military, they are strictly forbidden from purchasing a dessert topping. Does this actually stop bad behavior or just ruin ice cream sundaes? 35. Vermont does not mess around when it comes to breakfast condiments. It is a strict violation of state law for any grocery store or restaurant to label a product as maple syrup if it is actually made of high-fructose corn syrup and artificial flavorings. If you try to pass off cheap, artificially flavored pancake sludge as authentic Vermont maple, the state government will slap you with hefty fines. They treat fake syrup with the same level of legal hostility most states reserve for counterfeiting money. 36. Grocery stores in Indiana are strictly forbidden from selling cold beer. You can buy all the warm, room-temperature beer you want, but if you want it chilled, you have to go to a dedicated liquor store. The bizarre logic here is supposedly to deter public drinking and underage consumption, assuming people are too impatient to wait for a fridge to do its job. So, modern supermarkets are left selling hot lagers while painfully watching the specialized liquor store across the street monopolize the lucrative summer barbecue market. 37. We all know that abandoning a shopping cart in a random parking space is morally questionable, but in several states, walking it completely off the property is a literal crime. Under strict laws in places like Florida and Maryland, removing a cart from a supermarket's designated parking lot is a criminal misdemeanor, regardless of whether you ever plan to return it. Police officers can and will cite you for the possession of stolen retail property. The next time you think about rolling your heavy groceries all the way home, remember you are technically hijacking a metal vehicle. 38. In North Carolina, a grocery store cannot simply slap the word discount or wholesale onto its exterior signage unless they can financially prove it in a court of law. State consumer protection statutes dictate that if you boldly claim to be a discount supermarket, your retail prices must actually be significantly lower than the standard industry average. If a fancy, overpriced market tries to trick buyers with a fake bargain name, the state will aggressively force them to rebrand. It is a brilliantly aggressive law that actually holds sneaky corporate marketing departments accountable. 39. Buying a bagel in a New York supermarket or deli comes with a hidden tax penalty, but only if you want it sliced. Thanks to a hyper-specific state tax law, an unsliced bagel is considered tax-exempt food. However, the moment an employee takes a knife to it, it becomes a prepared meal, which is subject to an 8% sales tax. You are literally paying the government for the sheer convenience of a horizontal cut. New Yorkers are tough, but apparently, slicing their own breakfast is where they draw the line. 40. In 1939, a Massachusetts lawmaker actually introduced a passionate bill to make it a strict criminal offense to put tomatoes in clam chowder. While the outright ban did not fully pass into the modern penal code, the intense cultural and regulatory hostility remains very real today. If a New England supermarket deli attempts to deceptively label a red tomato-based soup as authentic Boston clam chowder, they quickly run afoul of strict state food misbranding laws. You can legally sell Manhattan chowder, but you better label it correctly, or the state will literally treat it as consumer fraud. 41. Massachusetts enforces some of the strictest blue laws in the country, completely forbidding grocery stores from opening on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. It does not matter if you forgot the crucial cranberry sauce or need an emergency can of gravy. Every single supermarket door is locked tight by order of the state. The government mandates this to ensure retail workers get time off, which sounds noble, but it leaves thousands of panicked home chefs completely stranded and scrambling. It is a true test of culinary survival. 42. South Dakota has drawn a hard legal line when it comes to combining your sugar rush with a buzz. It is illegal for grocery stores to sell candies that contain more than half of 1% of alcohol by volume. So, those fancy liquor-filled chocolates you see around the holidays, highly contraband. The state apparently fears that innocent shoppers might accidentally get intoxicated from eating 3 pounds of truffles. What kind of wild underground candy rings do they think are operating in the Midwest? 43. By strict federal mandate, pure vanilla extract must contain a minimum of 35% alcohol. That means the tiny bottle of baking flavoring sitting innocuously in aisle 4 is technically 70-proof hard liquor, rivaling most vodkas. Yet, surprisingly, there is absolutely no federal age restriction to buy it. Teenagers who get carded for buying a rated R movie can walk right into a supermarket and legally purchase a basket full of 70-proof baking supplies. Why does the government heavily regulate cold medicine but completely ignore the liquor hiding in the baking aisle? 44. You cannot legally buy a can of Pringles potato chips in America because the federal government ruled they are not actually chips. Back in 1975, the FDA decreed that since Pringles are made from dehydrated potato dough rather than freshly sliced raw potatoes, the company was committing consumer fraud. They were legally forced to rebrand their entire product line as Potato Crisps. The government basically decided that if your snack is shaped in a perfect geometric laboratory cylinder, it forfeits the right to call itself a chip. 45. The next time you walk down the freezer aisle, look closely at the cartons. Federal law dictates that a product can only be legally labeled ice cream if it contains at least 10% dairy milk fat. To save money, many massive brands quietly swap their cream for cheaper vegetable oils and corn syrup. As a result, they were legally stripped of the ice cream title and are now forced to use the depressing, bureaucratic term frozen dairy dessert. You are legally eating sugary oil, not authentic ice cream. 46. Arkansas politicians are so fiercely protective of their local fishing industry that they weaponize the dictionary against grocery stores. By strict state law, supermarkets cannot legally label any imported foreign-grown fish as catfish, even if it is biologically the exact same species. Stores are legally forced to label the imported fillets with confusing, unappetizing scientific names instead. The state government essentially trademarked a fish species, ensuring that unsuspecting shoppers will always reach for the familiar, locally sourced American product. 47. Those expiration dates on your supermarket groceries are essentially a massive legal fiction. With the sole exception of infant formula, the federal government does not mandate or regulate any sell-by or best-before dates on your food. They are entirely made up by the manufacturers as a vague guess of peak quality, not food safety. Millions of Americans blindly throw away perfectly good food every single week simply because they mistakenly believe a legally meaningless stamp tells them their yogurt has magically turned to poison. 48. If you hear a loud bell ringing inside a Trader Joe's, you are not losing your mind. You are witnessing a delightfully weird corporate mandate. The supermarket chain completely outlaws the use of modern public address systems in all locations. Instead, employees are bound by a rigid maritime rule to communicate using heavy brass ship bells. 1 ring means open a new register, 2 means a customer has a question, and 3 summons a manager. Why did a massive modern grocery chain decide to run its operations like a confused 18th century pirate ship? 49. California recently passed a groundbreaking law that is about to permanently alter the candy aisle. The state legally banned the sale of any food containing red dye number 3, citing severe health risks. Because this artificial chemical is heavily used in iconic treats like Skittles and Pez, grocery stores are legally mandated to pull these colorful classics off the shelves unless the manufacturers completely alter their secret recipes. Do you prefer your candy legally safe and naturally colored, or do you want the glorious toxic neon crunch? Alright, we have navigated 49 absolutely baffling regulations, and there is just one final entry left. But before we reveal number 50, it is time for the final verdict. In our opinion, the award for the most unbelievable rule from today's list easily goes to the 70-proof vanilla extract loophole. Simply because the idea of treating a baking ingredient like unregulated vodka is hilariously unhinged. Do you agree with our verdict? Or did another point deserve this dubious honor? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And now, our final number. 50. Next time you buy tomatoes, remember that you are purchasing a botanical fruit that the United States government legally forced into being a vegetable. Back in the 1890s, the Supreme Court officially ruled in Nix versus Hedden that tomatoes must be taxed and legally classified as vegetables for commercial trade. This historic legal fiction means that every supermarket in America operates under a government-mandated botanical lie. simply because lawmakers wanted to extract higher import tariffs. The American supermarket is an absolute maze of bizarre corporate mandates, psychological tricks, and hilarious bureaucratic nonsense. From ancient maritime bells to high-tech security grids, the grocery aisle is governed by rules we barely notice. Next time you grab a shopping cart, pay close attention to the invisible system manipulating your every move. Is it perfectly acceptable to open a snack and eat it while you shop, as long as you pay for the empty bag at the end? Or is that just a trashy form of temporary theft? Drop your thoughts below, hit subscribe for more fascinating realities, and never trust a cheap rotisserie chicken.